Hilchos Ishus Perek Yud Aleph Halacha Aleph. Yeah, what page are we on in the big version?
Yeah, I watched them.
380. What page is it?
That's 382.
382. Halacha Yud Aleph. So yesterday we talked about the Nisuin. Now today we're going to talk about the Ksuba, the different situations beginning of the Ksuba, and also what happens if the Chassan says day after the Chasana that he thinks his wife was with somebody else before. All right, Halacha Aleph. And then you said Basula Alma, someone who marries a Basula, she was never with somebody else, but she was a widow. The person passed away after the Kedushin. She is Garsha, or she was divorced after the Kedushin. In other words, the person not only was she widowed, but after the Kedushin, for example, the husband passed away and he had no kids. So if she's Nechlitza, she's obviously also an Almana, but not necessarily. Almana could be also just not Nechlitza. Let's say the person passed away after the Kedushin, they obviously had no kids, but she's still not Chayv Nechlitza, maybe he had kids from a previous marriage. So anyways, Imina Iris in this Almana, this Gasha Nechlitza, if it's from the Kedushin that she was a widow the first time, or divorced, or had to do Chalitza, Ksubasa Masayim. Ksuba remains 200 like it was if she had never even been Mekadesh in the first place, because she's still a Basula. If, however, that she was divorced or widowed, or did chalitza from the situation of Nisuyin, that the person they went into the Yichud room, even if Begashmi she's still a Basula, because Vasameya, her Ksuba is only 100 Shenish. Once she has a bit of an Asua, it's if she had relations, because now her status, the fact that she's moved to have relations, makes her status is Kaviyachot demoted, and her Ksuba now is worth only 100. There's a certain chshivas to the fact that not only she's a Basula Begashmi, but she is never was allowed to be a non-basula. But here, she theoretically had a time when she was allowed to be a non-basula, and therefore her ksuba is devoted from 200 to 100. Person marries a person who's begashish a basula, she's a virgin, but she was freed from captivity. She was captured as kidnapped by pirates or whatever it is, and then she was freed later on in life. A woman who converted, a geras, or a shavu, or she was. I'm sorry, that's shavui. What I just said about pirates. Shecheres means she was a shifcha kananis, and then she was freed and to become a free person. So she was a maid servant, like a slave, and then she was freed. So in if she was freed from being a maid servant, this guy she converted a non-Jewish woman converted if this hashavuya, or she was freed from captivity. And she was less than 3 years old. It's the whole family converted together, and she was less than 3 years old when her parents were die with her. The ksuba is 200. Because even though there's a situation over here where Shaykh, that someone had relations with her against her will, but because it happened when she was younger than 3 years old, so the status is not considered a Bial Pitera. And the Gashmi is if she's younger than 3, the Basulim can grow back. The hymen, the skin is called. If I wish she was already 3 years old, in that case, the Ksuba is 100. So the assumption is, the Rambam explains Halacha Beis, so why the Chum established a ksuba of 100 zuz only? These type of people, even though they are presumably, a certain possibly they're still presumably basulim, the Gashmias. Since it's the chazak of a woman who was married as an asur that she had relations, the should be boiled, and the assumption again is that a girl who was a maidservant or was a goy or was captured by pirates is that she had relations because people of that status, the goyim and maidservants, are not careful about the znus, and a person who's captured by pirates, again, they don't care about the pirates are the ones who are not careful about these things. Therefore, the Chum established the ksuba as 100 zuz. Whether the gashmis there was actually relations or not, the halacha considered to be bu'ulus, and therefore their status is non-virgin. Therefore, the ksuba is 100. Halacha gimel. In other words, even if theoretically they can prove that they're still a basula, the status makes them like a bu'ula, and therefore the ksuba is 100. Gimel. Mukas eitz. Someone who literally means hit by a stick. But the point is that there was a physical injury that caused the virginity to be ruined. Shubasa meya, her ksuba is also only 100. Even though she didn't have relations, but the ksuba is still 100. But she had an operation that had to, and therefore she's not a basula of a gashmias. And therefore the ksuba is 100. Even if the husband marries her under the understanding with the condition that she's a complete virgin, she's a complete basula. It turns out she actually had an injury, she's not a basula. Nevertheless, you don't say that it's a makachpalas, a false pretenses, and the marriage is off. No, we don't say the marriage is not off. Just ksubasa may, she look at the ksub, except that it's 100, even though you would think it's considered false pretense. It's not considered false pretense because she was never with the person, with another man. Yeah, absolutely. Now, a girl younger than 3 years old who has relations, God, even if the man is an adult, she still has a ksuba of 200 when she gets married. Because since the basulim will grow, the hanim will grow back, the end of the basula, therefore she has the status of a basula. Similarly, an adult woman who has a relationship with a minor, with a boy who is less than 9 years old, she also has ksuba of 200 zuz. As if she never had relations. The Shulchan Aruch explains that this applies when only the gashius, the woman's basulim is still intact. That's the assumption to be the case if the child is younger than 9 years old. Because the relations of a male who's 9 years old is considered relations. Pachos that younger than that, and biasidi, it's not considered relations. It could be according to the Rambam, doesn't have to be gashmius intact. But the fact is that a 9-year-old's basulim is not relations, doesn't have the status of pidin of a basula. Okay, anyway. Dalit. Basula, she begeres a basula who was already 12 and a half. She's 6 months post physical maturity. Right, we said it's kana. Then when she becomes physically mature, if she's at least 12, she's a naira. 6 months after becoming a naira, if she's exactly 12, or if it happens to her later in life, whenever she becomes physically mature and she's 12, at least 12 years old, 6 months after that, she's a begeres. So if she's a begeres, which is the usual case when you're talking about a regular kala, or summa, or she's blind, or islandess, or she is a woman who can never physically become mature. So she can never have kids. She's impotent, or sorry, sterile. Kubasa Masayim, the ksuba is 200. Aba chereshes, va'shoita, a woman who is a deaf mute or mentally, emotionally challenged. Lo yitiknu lehen ksuba, Chum did not establish a ksuba for them. So if someone marries them, there's no ksuba. Why? Hashoita, a woman who's not normal, lo yitiknu la ksuba klat, nesuin klal. There's not that kind of marriage. So if a man marries a woman, she's become considered married. Va'cheresh is a deaf mute, a woman who's a deaf mute. Even though Chum didn't establish the concept of marrying them, they did not establish a ksuba for her because they should let you know. Let's finish Allah 1 second. So people should not be refrain from marrying them. So to make it as attractive as possible financially for a man to be willing to marry such a woman who's deaf mute, Chazal said there's no ksuba. This way, at least someone might be willing to marry her. Now she has the right to say, "I'm not marrying unless you write a ksuba for me," if she thinks that she's worth it, so to speak. So that's fine, but we said if a person marries a woman, even they both agree there's no ksuba, you're not allowed to do that. You have to have a ksuba, otherwise it's bilas nus. Over here, you don't have to have a ksuba. Shame she'ain lo ksuba, just like there's no ksuba for this type of woman who's a deaf mute. Kach ein mazenis, she doesn't have also the husband not required to feed her. Again, these are all things she knows and she's aware of before she gets married on this condition. But time of that ksuba, all the conditions of the ksuba, the husband's obligation to provide for her clothing, all these things. There's no obligation on the husband to do these things. In Karas Karesh, if he marries her and then she gets healed, she becomes normal, she gets her hearing back, and she can speak. And the Yesh Ksuba, in that case, she does have a Ksuba, and all the conditions of Ksuba. Ksuba Saman, the Ksuba is 100 because she already had relations before when she was married the first time. So if she's healed and he wants to stay married to her, he has to commit himself to a Ksuba of 100 years. I'm sorry, what was your question?
The question, the point is someone who gets married in a sense where the person turns out not to be well, afterwards.
But that's only the problem. That's like a cause.
That's like a cause.
Yeah.
There's no.
But here, everyone knows that she's a Karesha. She says, "Listen, I'll marry you, lady, but no ksuba." And she says, "Fine." So it's not considered bilas nus. A regular woman, you're not allowed to do that. You have to have a ksuba, which yesterday. Here, if she's agreeing and he's agreeing, then there's no ksuba required. This way, Chazal made it possible, more likely for her to find a shidduch. Halacha, hey, nasa Karesha say shaita v'kos male mana. If a person marries a deaf mute or a shaita, and he writes them a ksuba, even if it's 100 mana, which is 10,000 zuz, ksuba the ksuba is legitimate. He wants to damage. He chose to damage his own money. He's allowed to do that. So if he's the chayvel in ksuba, then obviously the ksuba is legitimate. Therefore, if she says, "Listen, I might be a deaf mute, but I'm Miss America, whatever. If you want to marry me, you have to ksuba 10,000 zuz." So he has to say then it's a legitimate ksuba. But a deaf mute or a shaita, a male who's a deaf mute or a shaita, they marry a normal woman. Even though the man who was mentally incompetent or deaf mute, he became healed. The wife does not at that moment. The fact he became healed now doesn't mean necessarily that the person owes them anything, because since they got married, the husband was a cheresh or shayt. He's not a chay himself, and therefore the moment he heals himself, the moment he can hear and speak, and he says, "You know what? Now that I can hear and speak, I don't like the way your voice sounds. I'm divorcing you. He's not mechutz be'er ksuba. Now, if he wants to stay married to her, yesh like ksuba. In that case, there is a ksuba. Ksuba a man. The ksuba is 100 again because they had relations presumably before, and therefore it's 100. Based in him, if Bezdin saw it fit to marry this deaf mute off to this woman, and they decided that they should write a ksuba on his property, then they tell us call Masha Kosher Bezdin. Then whatever Bezdin saw to be fit at the time, they wrote the ksuba. She's entitled to all of that. That can happen. The Bezdin can officiate over such a match, such a union, and they can write a ksuba based on what they see fit. On let's say he inherited a lot of money from a parent. He has a lot of money, so Bezdin can write a ksuba if they want. That's as far as being a deputy. A shaita, a man who's a shaita, Bezin doesn't marry him off. But because the chacham's takana of marriage will not be able to withstand. In other words, because the assumption is that a marriage like this will not last, because a person who's mentally challenged, and there's a shaita, it's not going to. An ordinary woman's not going to stay with him. But the chacham did not want to establish the suyin because it's not. It's a bizoyin. It's scornful for Bezdin to make a match, and then it doesn't last. So the Chum didn't establish that. A cotton, a child, a male. The Chum did not establish any kind of marriage for him. However, since eventually he'll become older, when he's old, he can get married properly. Doesn't wait until he becomes older. Now, a girl who's a child, the father could, of course, accept kedushin for her. However, if the father passed away, well, let's say she got married as a child, and she was married for Eris and a and then the person divorced her, or he died. So now again, she's a katana, but she's under her own jurisdiction. So the father died, or she was a man or a grusha from the suyin. In that case, Chazal did establish that on the suyin derabanan, and the derabanan, even though not there's no way for her to get married, she's a child. There's no father. There's a kedushin for her, but the father's no jurisdiction for her. The Chum did establish a marriage for her. Okay, not taking the Hasuin like a Tana. Why did the Chum establish a marriage for a female minor? Even though she eventually would get married as an adult, she could get married properly. So what's the rush to establish such a concept of Nisuin for a child? They should learn so that because we shouldn't leave a situation where people are going to be frivolous with her. She's a single girl. She has no father. Maybe the father passed away, or she's on her own jurisdiction. So therefore, she's likely to people are going to fool around with her, and they're not going to be careful about that because it's not an Issachar, she's not an Ish. So therefore, the Chacham established, if we see the possibility of this happening, lives in a bad neighborhood, so we can make her married. Now she's an Ish, and therefore the people are less likely to fool around with her. You don't marry a cotton. Unless we know for sure that he's physically mature. We said before, however, that there's no nisuin for a cotton. So what does it mean unless there's a cotton? We just said a second ago there's no nisuin for a cotton. Oh, he means a katana. Yeah, he means a minor. Okay. So if you've seen this, what? The Rambam says, even though it says cotton, it means katana. Maybe the right use is katana. Let's see. No, very posh. So it says, before we said the Chamim, we said a few lines up, halfway through Hakavav, the Chena Katan, Loi Tikna Cham Nisuyim. Now it's saying, so when he brings Simanim, even though he's younger than 13, he's not Mamash Katan anymore. That's what they consider, So no, that, in other words, a Mamash child, there's no Nisuyim for a male minor. But if once he has physical maturity, even if he's not a mitzvah yet, there could be a concept of Nisuyim. Oh, look at Lachazayin. Cotton, a cotton, even if he's 9 years old, so he's considered a bia, he marries a woman, ain't la ksuba, she doesn't have a ksuba. because he can't even hide himself in any money. He's a child. Once he becomes our mitzvah, and now he wants to stay with her. They want to stay together after he's an adult. She does have the primary ksuba, the basic amount. The chen gerish is guy who usually similarly have a ger, a guy, a goyish couple. They convert together. She bought some money. Her ksuba is 100. Shaman asking kima because again the assumption is that he's keeping her only outside that ksuba is 100. In other words, even if the gashmi is, she's still a basula. No, 1 second. Yeah. Yeah, in other words, even if he's in the verse, even if before he converted, he made a commitment that he's going to marry her as a Jewish woman. They're both Jewish, and they give a ksuba of more. He's not mechuyev to keep that commitment. The commitment he made before he's a guy is not mechuyev to keep. Because once he becomes a ger, he's not mechuyev to keep the commitment he made when he's a goy, basically. Okay, Allah ches. Kol basula shekshubas masam. Every case we have a basula. A regular case where she has a ksuba of 200 zuz. Yesh la tainas basulim. There can be a situation of tainas basulim. This is where the husband says, I think there was some monkey business over here. The chelosh ksubasa meya, any situation where the ksub is only 100 because of whatever situation, she was Megayer after she was 3 years old, or whatever the case, where basically the ksub is only 100. Or you should do chum ksuba, the chum b'chlal said there's no ksuba, like the case where a person marries a deaf mute, a woman who's a deaf mute. There's no tanis pasulim, which we'll explain soon what that means. The Mesiachni or a sasa committed. So if somebody is on the issue of yichud with his mukudeshes prior to the chasana, prior to the nisuyin, there's no time he can make that there was something fooling around, because if you're miyachid with her, you're not supposed to. Maybe you're the one who fooled around with her. Test. What is this kind of basulim, or the questioning of the basulim? That is his occasion. Also, Isha, a person married a woman. She basulah the assumption was she's. Right. So if he's and if he's not allowed to have B with her though, that's also the rabbanon. After B is only mutter after nisuyin. But this is a case where only is kedushin. And Rasasim is like kedushin. No, we don't know what happened. He's saying I never touched her. We only read the newspaper, even though we were in the same apartment all night. And then after the chassan, 6 months later, he says she's not a basula. So so our response to him is, what happened 6 months ago when you spent the night together? Maybe it was you. In other words, we don't know, so you can't have a time on her. There's no basulim. And
how come the ksuba wasn't written by the?
Because generally speaking, the ksuba is actually by the nisuyin. It was only yesterday we said that the whole thing applies when he goes and writes the ksuba before. But generally speaking, the ksuba is b'shas nisuyin. That's the usual case. To write it before the nisuyin or any time substantially before the chuppah is not the norm. The norm is the ksuba kadafka. She's only entitled to ksuba after the nisuyin, or once he writes it. If you choose to write it earlier, fine. You don't have to. You're not mechuyev in the ksuba until you marry her as a nesua, or you write the ksuba write it earlier. But if that was in the kaddish, he divorces her the next day without a ksuba. She's not mechuyev. She doesn't get any money. Or if he dies, she doesn't get any money. So those cases we had the previous halachas where we said that we explained. I think I said right that those are cases where the minhag over there was to write the ksuba by the kedushin, or he chose to write it by the kedushin. But that's the exception though.
And again, our minhag is that we write it before.
We do kedushin and nisuyin together nowadays. But the general minhag even at the time of the Gemara was that the ksuba was a nisuyin. Right, that's when you share the ksuba, right? The relations, clothing, and the zaynis. It all goes together. That's all from nisuyin and onward. Yeah, makes sense? Okay. So test. My tanis basulim. What is tanis basulim? Zeshin also isha discussion. Basula, a person marries a woman under the assumption that she is a basula. The Torah that he says, "Lemitzasi basula." I didn't find her to be a basula the night of the wedding. What does it mean to find her to be a basula? There's two simanim that are by a basula. One siman is the blood that flows from her at the end of the first time having relations. The second siman is the difficulty, the tightness. She might say, "Bala be a rishayna b'shas tashmis." That happens the first time she has relations. These are the two simanim of a basula. Yud. And then he says, "A basula sheksuba no sign." Someone marries a basula, and the assumption is that she's a basula. She has a ksuba of 200. The Tom of many times he says, I didn't find it basula. So what do you do? Sharon, so we ask her, is it true that you weren't a basula by the Nisuyin? Imam, if she says, Emes with Takachula, I'm not a basula begachmis, the patient of Falti Vikami AIDS because I had an accident, a physical injury. Or Ikarka, or I had an injury, I fell and I was hit by a piece of wood or the ground. And my basulim were taken away in that way. Herish the minute she's believed the toxic subas lamana and the ksuba and so he doesn't
we rewrite it to
Mother. But it's not shot that he says I want someone to pursue gashmi so the wedding's off. It's not the case. No, she stays married and she has a ksuba of a mana, and if he wants to divorce her, he has to pay that mana. He says Shema Ish Ibalayich. Maybe a man had a relationship with you between the time I was in Kadishu, or sorry, but any time before the Nisuyin. Maybe someone had a relationship with you. But you don't deserve anything. I can divorce you and pay you nothing. We don't pay attention to his taina because he's saying maybe. She's saying I'm telling you what happened. So it's like a shamer, right? I'm telling you that the lightning struck your cow and it died. Well, maybe you killed it. Maybe you were negligent. But you weren't there. So what are you saying maybe for? Therefore, Bari V'Shema, I'm telling you what happened. So my time is better than your time. She can make a chayim that whoever's lying about this concept of never being with a man deserves a punishment. That's called a chayim. Since he doesn't have a tanis vadai, therefore her tanis outweighs his tanis. Good. Halacha yud al. Amr he if she says when they ask her, is it taka true? You're not a psula. Emes Omar that the man is saying, my husband is saying correct, truthfully. He did not find me to be a basula. It happened after our kedushin, the year between the kedushin and the suyin. Somebody forced me, someone raped me. So Hariz the man, she's trusted because Basim assignment the ksuba is 200, as she said, because the fact that and again, the case over here is the chayda that the rape happened after the person wrote a ksuba for her. I imagine, because otherwise it was under false pretenses. The chayda. So the fact is that since it wasn't her fault, so the ksuba is still 200. Or it could be even if it was her, could be even if it happened before the ksuba was written, still it wasn't her fault, and therefore the chazal didn't take away her rights to 200 ksuba. This whole case, we're not talking about a claim. The claim is a whole different, more complicated story. But we're talking about a Levi is so. Now, if the husband says, you're saying that you were raped, maybe the rape happened before the Kiddushin. So when I was Mekadosh you, the whole Kiddushin was a Mekachtos. Or maybe it was after the Kiddushin, but you're willing. You're saying it happened ba'onis. You're saying it happened ba'onis after the Eris. And therefore, the B'shas was Mekadosh you were basula, and therefore you deserve 200. I'm saying that maybe it happened before I was Mekadosh you. Maybe it happened after I was Mekadosh you, but you were a willing participant. So again, she's saying no. I'm telling you about what happened. He's saying maybe. So he's a machim stam amisha train shaka k'dei v'chayim moment. She ain't chayiv boy. He can make a chayim against whoever may be saying something that makes me obligated money I shouldn't be obligated in. Good. I'm making a chayim against anybody. Wink, wink. This person, this woman, who's trying to make me chayiv money. I'm not chayiv. I'm committed to. I'm obligated now in the ksuba of 200 in the event that she outlives him or he divorces her, and it's her word against his. She's believed because she's saying a vada, he's saying a shema. So again, he makes it chayim. He can't actually kind of vada you're lying, but he says if anyone here is lying about this, they deserve punishment. It's called a chayim, like a mishapara. Yud beis, right? Because she's saying I'm telling you it happened after, and it was forced, and he's saying maybe it was willing, and maybe it was before. Therefore, he says, okay, it's my word against yours. You're saying you know what happened. You were there, obviously. I wasn't there. But if you're lying about this, Hashem should punish you. It's called a chayim. Yud beis. I think it's very similar to Misha Park. Same idea. It's like basically, a cursing the person for not doing the right thing. What if he says again? I didn't find the basula. She responds, he didn't have relations with me yet. Then we. She should be examined to determine, by a woman, obviously, if there was relations or not. Or they have relations again in front of Aiden. This doesn't mean mamash in front of Aiden. It means a yached in front of Aiden. They go into a private place in front of Aiden because again, she's saying that that we never had that he's saying she's saying that he's not Kachanik. He's saying I'm a basula, I am a basula. He didn't even have relations with me yet. So there's two answers. One is to examine, right? If we can see that she's a basula still, then she's obviously telling the truth. Or um, if the second answer is that to go to a house in front of Adim, so then I guess the case of there must be where he's agreeing to.
It can be literal.
No, it doesn't mean mamish they watch.
Because in the Torah, when
right.
Somebody that's honest, that they will figure it out in the clear date, you know, if she was, doesn't need to trick you.
Right.
You don't do such a thing.
No, 100%. It means, in the first we explain, it means that the miyachid in front of Adim. The miyachid in front of Adim. But the word of chayos b'elfei Adim, the word is that the miyachid in front of Adim, but that, because again, she's saying we never were together b'chal even. So then the chayda, I'm trying to think why that helps, because he'll say, yes, we're not a basula. So how maybe it means he agrees. I guess it means that he admits that, because he's still saying you're not a basula. Like I know for sure you're not a basula. I found out last night. How is having him going to a house in a secluded place going to help them? Because he's going to say, yeah. I mean, because now, anyways, she's not going to be a basula afterwards. And he's going to say she wasn't a basula yesterday either. How do you expect that? I said Hakachanik before. That I said you use a woman or a woman doctor. The Gemara said you bring two shvachis, one's a basula, one's a ba'ula, and have them sit on a barrel, and you see if there's something that happens with the smell of the wine. It impacts the smell of the wine. That's how you would check. That's considered the way they would check. I mean, the chayra could be a female doctor is also a good way to check. I don't know. But upon him, okay, so one of the possibilities over here, but again, the bimi yachid is one of the Adim, is if she's timing, right, so she's timing, I'm still basula. Very possible. So she's timing, I'm still basula. So we say, yeah, okay, here's how we're going to prove it. Go into this room in front of two Adim, bimi yachid. When you come out, we're going to go inside, we're going to inspect the sheet. If there's blood, we know you're telling the truth. If there's not blood, you have to Hakachanik. Right, okay. So Amr, she says, if she says the exact opposite, she's until now we're saying how she's sort of like saying he's taka true, but this happened, that happened. Here, she's saying the exact opposite. He's saying I found not be a basula. She says absolutely. She says I'm absolutely was a basula. Shaka he's lying. So this is a head-on collision between the two of them. We asked the man. Why was so sanctioned basula? If he says if they should learn mitzvah, I'm finding the blood, then we do a search in the family tree. Medical records. Maybe they don't believe maybe not the dam nida, nor dam basulim. I'm not sure that I'm putting together two different bloods. I'm not sure what the connection is to have not have one, not the other. But maybe the family doesn't have any blood at all. You need to the cool and case the family before we find out her family history is. She's believed that she was a basula. She didn't have blood because it's a family genetic condition. If we don't find this family history, then we have to examine her different ways. Because maybe she's very sick. That her limbs are dried out, and she has no body moisture, no blood. Maybe she was starving. She was emaciated. She was anorexic. Then we give her good food. Then we give her to eat. Mativin is like yeah, sorry, thank you. Wash her. Yeah. Okay, they give it to eat. We heal her and give her to eat and drink and bathe until she's healthy. To follow Shane, so she have relation the second time. If you didn't pay it down and lay in the lab, and we see if there's blood or not. So if there is dam, the reason why there's no dam the first time is because of this condition.
Physical condition that allow it.
Right. So then now she will have dam, even though the chayr the basul.
I was going to ask you, what's the proof?
Yeah.
Once the basul is gone,
Yeah,
the washer
right.
second time.
Right, the chayre was going to prove. If there's no dam, so he'll say it's because she was not a because he'll say it's because she was long ago she was not a basula. That's what he'll say, and she will say there's no dam because the sulam went the first time when there was no blood in my body or in my area, and this time there's no blood because this time there's no blood because the basula is gone already. Yeah, but what this is what the Ram says over here. Um, yeah, I'm not sure what the answer to the question is. I'm sorry. Somehow or another, yeah, I don't know what the answer is. I don't know. But somehow it's supposed to help. What if, again, let's recap. He says you last night together, and she's not a basula, and she says shek I am a basula, and there's no way to explain how she could be a basula and not have dam, because there's no sickness, there's no family history. So the there's none of these sicknesses or hunger or family history. Hey, has basulim, then it's his word against her, but he has what's called tinus basulim. Even if it was difficult physically, it was tight and difficult by the tashmish. She's no blood. And she's not considered. She wasn't a basula. She called basula yesh dam because every basula there's blood. Big time being a dayla, whether she's a minor or an adult, being nara, being begeres, whether she's younger than 12 and a half or older than 12 and a half. The only exception would be therefore, the Tana is a good Tana. Now, why is he believed over her? We'll say soon. If he says, if they should learn, like if he says, the reason why I'm saying she's not a basula is because I didn't find it difficult. And not he says there was no blood. It was too easy. I found an open door, so to speak. Before I should say he's only believed this if he was married before, because otherwise how do you know? We ask about her age. Maybe she's older, she's 12 and a half already. Most girls who are already 12 and a half, it's not as difficult physically. They're already adults, and physically the physical body is more healed, and the adhesions are lessened, and the bishul is not as present as it was. So therefore, that's a possibility in terms of an explanation. If she's not 12 and a half yet, we say to him, maybe you angled yourself. You were very gradual when in the vila. Therefore, it wasn't difficult physically. If he says, no, that's not the case. I know for sure it's Pesach Suach. It's time for any basula who's not 12 and a half. If she's 12 and a half, and that's why it was easier physically. If she's not 12 and a half, then the reason why it wasn't easy is because she's not going to have basula. It's like a big time, whether she's adult or child, whether she's healthy or unhealthy, she's called Nara Basula. Every Basula is a closed door, so to speak. Even though there was blood, since it was a Pesach, open Pesach, and Kamsun not Kamsun, because the Chayre, if she had reached only one time before, is enough to make it, she could still be blood, but it's a Pesach Pesuach. So in order to be Tans Pesulim, it has to, if he says it's had dam, if he says because there's no blood, that's always a good time no matter the age. If he says it's had Deichak, it's only a good time if she's younger than 12 and a half. Yeah, sorry?
And the best about 12 and a half, that's still from the Gemara speaks only about somebody that is younger than a Psula.
I don't remember. I
I
think it was Zagan. Yeah, I didn't know. I guess so. That's so. The mom is a great joke about that. I'll tell you, it's an interesting story. Okay. Halachi,
Is it clean?
yeah. Halachi Gimel. Yeah, he gave Shahir Hashem Ga'inim who said, this is a very debate Hanano. By the way, I got to say something else. There are Shayim who say that that when he says the Pesach, that this whole situation over here, the Pesach Basuach, all these problems is if the original sheet of the bed that after the chasim was not there. If that's there, and you can use that as a way to see if there was dam or not. Okay. Big Gimel. Yesh Gim Shahayru. There are some Gim who instructed. There's been a Chanal he's talking about over here. Shabageresh Ema Tanis Damim. A Bageresh, a woman who's already over 12 and a half, as most collars are nowadays. There's no time of damim. If he says there's no blood, it's not a good time. Yesh a time Pesach Suach, but there is a time Pesach Suach. The exact opposite of damim says. Yeah, the Ein Dach and Marmarik Davar said the Gemara doesn't seem to imply this. The Torah say, but the Cheshvahem and the Gemaras that they had was a mistake in the Nusach. The Rabbi Al Sfar Rab Kadmenim. I already checked many different Nusachs of the Gemara from long ago. Matsasi Shadav Kamesha Banu. And I found the matters as I explained. She'ain the Begeres El Tanas Dam Bobad. Begeres only has Tanas Damim, but not Pesach Mitzvah. Okay, big doubt. So now that's as far as Tanas Pesulim. Back to the Ksuba in general. Chacham him shetiknu ikasub b'isha. The Chacham are the ones who established the concept of ksuba for a woman, the basic minimum amount. The Haim is they are the same people who said that. Oh, so we're still times for Sulim. They are the same ones who said to call it 20 times for Sulim, but Isha Machash Isai. Anyone who's sick makes a time that she wasn't Basulim. The woman says no, so it's his word against her word. Then when he's believed, and she has to bring her proof to back herself up. Why? Shechazaki, it's the assumption she ain't Adam Treach Basulim Mafsida. He's not going to make himself so busy and make a whole chasna and prepare the meal, and then transform his simcha to mourning on a false pretense. So obviously he's telling the truth. It's a raya that it makes more sense to believe him because he went through the man is the one who has the obligation to make the chasana. Now he did all that, and then he goes to go now and just to stop change his mind is very unlikely. That's why it says he says.
I don't get it. Well,
What all she do is show up. Nowadays, not that like that, but up he did. It's how it is. The husband. Now, so the Maggid Shtaka says that if he didn't prepare it, like if he's in Koil and the Kala side is doing all of the taka, he's not back. It's so partial. Tezva advance how long after the chasana can you have this taina? Even if they go into a secluded place, the miyad only immediately, right away. Afterwards, once I guess the amount of time of 4 to 5 minutes passes, it's too late. If they did not go into a secluded place, even after 30 days. So how long doesn't say exactly. But the point is that as long as I'm yachid with her, she could still he could still say that it wasn't me. If she's not a Basula, it's obviously somebody else. And therefore he's a good taina. Tez Zayin. All Gainim instruct. Shedesh Am Chacham, this the Chacham said. That he's believed his wife contradicts him. Is only to make her lose the iksuba of 100 to 200. About the sefis, the addition, she gets that. So if he promises her 1,000 zuz, so she doesn't get the 200, but the 800 she does get. Unless we know for sure with clear proof that she's lying. Unless, or she admits that I tricked him, I was a Ba'ula before the Kedushin. But if it's only his word against her word, then he's believed not to hit the Ksuba, but his choice to give her the voluntary gift that he obligated himself, that can only be nullified if he got a daya that it was a false pretense. Otherwise, he has to keep his word. And she admits. If she says no, I'm telling the truth. If we say I'm sorry, lady, the halach is we have to believe him, but he's the mechuyev in what he commits to. Therefore, but since she's taking from him money, on a situation where it's like a person has a star and the star is fishy, so there's a din of nishma v'noitla. It's like a shvua when you collect the money. It says in your star. So therefore, he has to make a shvua. She has to make a shvua by holding on a sefer Torah. It didn't call nishba v'noitla, as is those who make a shvua and extract money. And then after she gets to take the extra money beyond the 200. And he does not have a right. Excuse me. She does not have a right to make him make a shvua that he's telling the truth when he says, "I did not find you to be basula." But only afterwards would you say that he has to not. He gets to not pay the 200. She's going to say, "I want the full 1,000. You want to keep 200 for me because you're saying la basula? Make a shvua." She can't do that. The chazaki is again. He's not going to be teirach to make this whole wedding feast and then just lose and then make the whole thing go to waste. Again, she's going to make the same cherem against him if he's telling something false. Okay. If after he says after they conclude that he does not going to pay the 200 zuz, then he wants to stay married to her. Go back and write a new ksuba for 100 zuz. A person not allowed to live with his wife. Even 1 moment. As we explained. Therefore, if he chooses to keep her, that's his choice, provided that we don't have reason to assume she was Mizana the Isra after Kedushin. But if that's the case, he has to write a proper ksuba and have 100 zuz.
Thank you very much. Well, one if there's a question. Why is it not enough ground to fill a problem with the whole